Hey everybody, welcome to the first video for the Death and Life YouTube channel, which is a channel that is promoting the film that we just wrapped today. I'm Eric Norcross, and with me is Michael Bailey. And for the past 2 months, we've been working on a film project that will be finished very shortly. We just wrapped shooting today over on Randall's Island, which is an island in the East River between Queens and Manhattan. And I'm just so stoked that we've wrapped, and I've been thinking over this past week about how we got started, because once we start nearing the end of principal photography, it's quite an amazing thing. It's an amazing feeling every time, and I always start reflecting on where a project begins, and this actually didn't start with the intention to make the film that we ended up making. We were going to do a totally different project with a different set of ideas and explore different concepts. And we had a character who was in the process of hunting for work. And the idea of that story was to have him go through a recruitment process that required him to investigate a series of mysteries and riddles, and it would send him all over the city. That was the initial outline I had mapped out for a character for you. And we were going to do mostly improvised scenes with professional actors, because a lot of you might not know that even though he's the lead actor in this movie, you're not actually a professional actor.
No, absolutely not. I think to very credit to what Eric has spoken about is the idea we had initially thought out, and actually much of that credit for that idea was by Eric, was about this character who, yes, is looking for employment, who goes through these series of complex puzzles and riddles, and certainly that was really what became a derivative to the main idea of the light and dark, and this concept that continually reappears, both literally and metaphorically speaking throughout. And so to be part of this, certainly as a non-professional actor, to be able to contribute to this project's realization, absolute opportunity.
Yeah, and so what happened was, over the spring we realized that what I wanted to do, we didn't really have the resources to do, or the people to kind of fill out the gamut of characters that I had in mind. And so, keeping with this idea of exploring not the city but a city, I wrote an outline for what is now Death and Life, this film that this YouTube channel is now dedicated to promoting. But instead of following riddles and clues, we decided to tackle the idea of exploring Jane Jacobs' philosophies of what an efficient, effective, functioning, safe city should be, and why the way certain cities are simply laid out just don't work. So while this character is still exploring a city, not necessarily New York City, he's still trying to figure out not a series of riddles, but I guess the greatest riddle of all is what makes a city work.
Precisely. And when Eric certainly speaks of what makes a city work, we explore it, and it's really broken down into not just the architecture, not simply the layout, but thinking about also the street level, that level of activity within localized communities, within different, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and really asking oneself as an individual who is part of a larger community, that's part of a larger part of the city, that really encapsulates the entirety of New York City. What are elements, what are details, what are nuances that culminate to making that city so much more habitable, that make it so much more engaging, really accessible, if you will? And so, in this sense, you break it apart as a sequence of layers, and those layers all culminate into asking central questions both about city planning, about individuals who live in communities, about the communities themselves and how they choose to interact in relation to other communities, and most importantly, the introspective relationship one has with his or herself in conjunction to living in that city, to living where they live, to the environment they choose, and by a larger extent, the people they choose to put themselves around. So it's those levels and multitudes of interactions that occur almost simultaneously, constantly, throughout each day, each week, each month. And so this was, as someone who's lived here for 4 years, a great opportunity, both as an individual but also as an artist, to really internalize and to digest and explore with Eric.
Yeah, and these themes that he's talking about, they're not just underlying, underpinning ideas that inform it. I mean, this is up front and out there. This is exactly what this is about. This is what these characters are talking about. This is what's motivating them to the next, progression as far as their characters and the story goes. And I'm really excited that we got to shoot this. I haven't made a movie in quite a few years, which the story too. We're not going to go into it here, but to be able to just finish my studies and before starting my graduate studies, be able to make a movie. And of all the movies that I've been wanting to make this particular movie the way we did it, it was such a lovely experience these past 2 months. So I wanted to thank you for participating. Obviously, these things don't happen without collaborators, and I had a really good group of collaborators: Mike, Jan, John Mark McDonald. All three of you were awesome.
Well, absolutely, Eric. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to be even a small part in a larger operation. And certainly in this 2-month period, evolved to a level of an operation: coordination, scheduling, storyboarding, source material, all the elements that would constitute a fully realized film. So to be one part in this production, to be able to contribute to that, and to provide that, to be that person to help be on board to make that idea a reality, however I could, despite the lack of an acting background formally. For me, it was just as much of a privilege, a fun experience, and something I take away, again, as a person and as an artist. And I'm quite excited to go forward with this and to show this to everyone here on YouTube and everyone throughout the internet. So, Eric, thank you.
And I think that sort of, that not necessarily gratitude, but just that overall spirit that you just conveyed here is why I'm so thankful to have worked with you on this. Because yes, I said I wanted to make a movie where you're the actor and maybe we'll improvise some scenes just to give you a chance to be able to talk, because I love how you talk. And but then you went above and beyond. You were creating props yesterday. You were that journal prop where you were doing designs just so that we could have a prop for the film. And you contributed to some of the writing with some of the poetry that you wrote, and just generally helping out wherever you could. And it's really hard to find collaborators who are willing to do that, to really go above and beyond and ensure that this thing gets done when it gets done, and just keeping the thing moving forward to the finish line. And you just, I don't see that a lot, and so I really, really valued this experience because of that. So thanks.
Well, of course, I think there's a philosophy I've come to embody within the visual arts, which is that it's often a one-man show or exhibition, but it's a 10 to 15 to 20 man or person operation that works diligently, tirelessly, with a resounding sense of spirit and optimism, excitement, willingness and capacity to realize that project. And all these individual people work as little components, as little processors that ultimately make this micro board or makes this motherboard what it is. And so to simply be part of that, to experience that, makes me a lot more humble. in all of this, in all respects.
All right. So that's our first little bit of video for this channel. And again, this is our last day. We just shot the last bit of footage needed. We're here in Central Park, New York City. Just walked over here from Randall's Island. We're actually right in front of the famous Cleopatra's Needle, which is an obelisk from Egypt. I can't flip the screen to show you guys. I guess I'll have to do it this way. There it is. Cleopatra's Needle. And we'll return with some content. We're going to put up a trailer and updates whenever we get some screenings going. So thanks for visiting. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.